right, it's time to get back to the preview and prediction videos. Up today, LSU. Now, I don't reply to every single comment you guys leave on the channel, obviously. There's just way too many of them is one reason. But I do try to read as many of the comments as I can on every video I make. Do I read them all? No. Do I try to read as many as I can? Yes. And I have seen the comments. You guys seem to think that I am too high on a lot of these teams that we've done so far. A couple of things on that before we get to LSU. Keep in mind that for every win I give somebody, that correlates to a loss for somebody else. You know, these prediction videos that I do, I don't just give you a random record. I don't just say, well, this team's going 8-4. I name the 4 teams. If I have a team going 8-4, I tell you which 4 teams I think they're losing to. So that's 4 wins that's a win for each of those 4 teams on another prediction video. And it's 8 losses somewhere for those 8 other teams. They don't overlap. I don't change my mind as the predictions go along. So while it is true that I've been, it's really just been coincidence that the majority of the teams that I've done so far, I've ended up being a little bit higher on those teams than most people are. But when it comes to picking these teams out, that's like I've told you before, I just go to the Patreon page and I pick a team off the list. I've been doing this series of prediction videos for 5 or 6 years now, and it works the same way every time. So over on the Patreon page, I make a post. It's over there now. You can go check it out. The link's in the description of the video. It'll take you to the Patreon page. It's the first post you'll see. It's about these prediction videos. And then everybody that's on the Patreon page, they leave a comment telling me which team they want to see me do a prediction for. And every day when I get ready to sit down and do a prediction video, I just head over there and I pick a team off the list. I honestly don't know when I pick that team off the list whether I'm going to be higher or lower than the public's expectation of that team. I pick that team off the list, and then I have a series of sites that I go through and read up on each team. I look at recruiting sites. I look at transfer portal sites. I check rosters, new coaches in, coaches out, who they lose off of last year's team, returning production. I look at the Vegas expectations for a team. There's a whole list of things I look at. And then I look at the schedule and I go through it, and based off the information that I just read or just learned or whatever the case, I pick a winner and a loser for every single game on that particular team's schedule. And it just so happens that the teams I've been picking out so far, after going through all of that, I've been a little bit higher on them than a lot of you have. That's not the case today. Today we're doing LSU, and I am not high on LSU at all this year, and I'm going to kind of skip around a little. I normally talk about the Vegas expectations right before I put the schedule on the screen. Vegas has LSU winning 9 games. I don't see it. Before I even looked into anything about LSU today, these were sort of my thoughts about LSU. Brian Kelly, really good coach, been averaging 9-10 wins a year over a 15-year period in the Power 5. The majority of that at Notre Dame. Now, the last 2 years at LSU, this will be his 3rd year, but you coach in the Power 5 for 10 to 15 years and you average 9 or 10 wins a year, you're a good coach. Is he great? No, I'm not trying to argue he's great. He's got no major postseason wins, no playoff wins, no conference championship, or anything like that, but he's a good coach. You average that number of wins over that period of time, so you know that going in. We also know that when you look at last year's LSU team, they had one of the best offenses in the country and one of the worst defenses that LSU has ever had, at least that in my memory, that I can ever remember seeing. It was absolutely pitiful last year. Now, what they do from last year to this year, different offensively or defensively? Well, obviously, they won. The quarterback won the Heisman, Jaden Daniels. He's gone. He was a big part of what they did offensively, which is what kept them afloat last year. He's gone. 2 of their top wide receivers are gone, Neighbors and Thomas, off to the NFL. They've got a center they've got to replace. So they got some replacing to do in terms of players on the offense. They lost the offensive coordinator, which I think was a big part of their success last year. He's now at Notre Dame, running the offense up there. Then you look over on the defensive side of the ball. Well, they fired the defensive coordinator and the entire staff and brought in all new. That's great. I think that's what they needed to do. They bring back probably their best player defensively in Perkins there in the middle. He's going to play inside linebacker again. They have a probable NFL player in the secondary in Major Burns. He plays sort of a hybrid safety type position. I believe they call it the star at LSU. A lot of teams have a position they call the star. I think that's what LSU calls it. It's sort of a safety linebacker hybrid. Anyway, and their defensive line is horrendous, and they missed on almost every major target they went after in the portal. So this is kind of what I'm thinking about LSU heading into the season, knowing that they're going to play an SEC schedule with with Texas and Oklahoma now added in new scheduling and all that kind of thing. So nothing about a record, because you got to look at the schedule before you try to determine a team's record. But if you would have asked me, and people have over the last couple of weeks, my thoughts on LSU heading into today, before I looked into them, everything I just told you is what I've been telling people for the last 2 weeks. Worried about the defense, new coordinator, missed on a lot of targets through the portal on the defensive line, which is their weakest area. The secondary is bad too, outside of Major Burns. Harold Perkins being back is a huge plus. Offensively, hard for me to imagine the offense will be as good as last year. Why? Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, gone. Offensive coordinator that ran the offense, gone. 2 best wide receivers, gone. Not to say the offense will be bad. I like Nussmeier. We're going to talk about him in a minute, but I don't see LSU's offense replicating what it did last year. So the question becomes, can the defense improve enough to make up that difference? Because, of course, LSU went 9-3 last year in the regular season, 10-3 after a bowl win. Can the defense get good enough to reach that level or higher this year to make up for what they're losing on offense? And my thoughts heading into today before I sat down to the video was no, I don't think it can. Generally speaking, defenses that bad are at a minimum a 2-year turnaround. You look at a recent success story in Ohio State. They were a soft defense for a period of years following COVID. They gave up 300 yards rushing to Oregon and Michigan and pushed off the line of scrimmage and bullied. And anytime they played a physical team, they lost. They bring in a new defensive coordinator. Little bit better that first year. And then last year, top 10 defense in the country. You could argue top 5. And LSU has the ability to bring in the talent to get to that level. We know that. So if this coordinator works out, I think he can get LSU's defense back to where we've seen it in the past and where it needs to be. Do I think that can happen in 1 year? No, especially given the misses that they had in the transfer portal. Offensively, Brian Kelly, let's just sort of start, not fresh, but we just go from the top now and go through. So Brian Kelly, year 3. Year 1, he wins the SEC West. Year 2, I guess technically a step back because they didn't win the SEC West, but they were still a pretty good team. They went 9-3 in the regular season. They had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and one of the best offenses in the country. They then won their bowl game over Wisconsin, a game that Nussmeier, this year's starting quarterback, started and threw for 400 yards. And it was a crazy game, shootout. Led him on, I think, a 90-yard touchdown drive to win that game at the end. But he threw for 400 yards in a last drive, a touchdown on the last drive to win the game. It was a great game. One of the better bowl games, actually. Finished 10-3. Their losses last year. Florida State at the beginning of the year in a game that really wasn't that close and really got away from them in the second half. Then they had that just back and forth track meet game a lot of you might remember against Ole Miss. They ended up losing that one 55-49. We're going to talk a lot more about Ole Miss in this video in a minute because they play again this year, and I think it's going to be a great game. And they lost on the road at Alabama. So those were their 3 losses, then beat Wisconsin, like I mentioned, in a bowl game. Had a great offense. One of the worst defenses in memory for LSU. I can't remember seeing a defense that bad. The offense was unbelievable, lights out. Jaden Daniels had an amazing season, over 1,000 yards rushing, won the Heisman Trophy, threw for a bunch of yards. Just one of the best offenses in the country, period. And one of the worst defenses. Brand new coaching staffs this year. The offensive coordinator is gone from last year. He left for Notre Dame to take a similar position there. And they fired the entire defensive staff, including the defensive coordinator. So all of that is brand new too. So you've got new coordinators on both sides of the ball and all new defensive staff. Again, generally a 2-year turnaround when you make these kinds of significant changes, even in the age of the portal, where you can sort of bring players in right away that are already developed at least a little bit somewhere else in theory. The fact that they missed on a lot of those targets in the portal and his entire new defensive staff, it seems like a minimum 2-year turnaround to me. These are just my thoughts. Feel free to disagree. And of course, quarterback gone, Garrett Nussmeier in. So Nussmeier is going to be the quarterback this year. Now, I like Nussmeier, and I've said before, I think he might be a better just pure passer of the football than Jaden Daniels. Now, we all know there's more to playing the position of quarterback than just being able to throw the ball, right? Joe Milton can throw the ball 90 yards. Anthony Richardson at Florida. Neither one of those guys were great college quarterbacks. In the case of Anthony Richardson, he wasn't even a good college quarterback. Now, I know he got drafted high and he's in the NFL. We'll see what he does there, but I'm just talking about from a college perspective. They weren't very good. So just being able to throw the ball, you got to have more than that, right? You got to be able to read defenses, progress through your reads, run an offense. That's really a quarterback's primary job, is to run the offense. Now, to run the offense, you need certain skills and abilities, like the ability to throw the ball, the ability to read a defense, like I mentioned. If you happen to have the ability to run around like Jayden Daniels, then that is a huge plus and a check mark. Nussmeier doesn't have that type of runaround ability, but he is mobile. He can escape some pressure in the pocket. Is he going to run for 1,000 yards? No. He's not even going to run for 500. Can he pick up a first down with his feet on 3rd and 4 if protection breaks down? Yeah, at times I think he'll be able to do that. He's not a statue, but he's clearly not Jayden Daniels in terms of his athleticism or mobility or escapability from the pocket or a threat to run downfield or anything like that. But I do think he can sit in the pocket and sling the ball. And we've seen that in the second half against Georgia in the SEC championship game 2 seasons ago when Jayden Daniels got hurt and Nussmeier played the second half, and the bowl game last year against Wisconsin. And I know that, if you lose the bowl game, the game doesn't count, and whatever you think about bowl games. The point is, he played really, really good, okay? I mean, does that mean he will play good this season? No, but it's a positive sign. Just like, I guarantee you, if he played terrible, the LSU haters will be pointing it out and going, oh, he was terrible, look what he did in the bowl game. But because he played good, you're going to go, what, a game that counts. He played good. The last 2 times, really, that we've seen him play significant snaps, the second half against Georgia in the SEC title game and the bowl game this past season against Wisconsin, he's looked pretty good. No reason to think he won't look pretty good again. So he'll be the quarterback. As far as the wide receivers go, I mentioned losing 2 really good ones. Now, this is an area where LSU has never really seemed to have a problem. It's hard to find a year in recent memory they don't have 1 or 2 elite wide receivers. Of course, they lose Neighbors and Thomas from last year. They're both off to the NFL. They were really, really good. Kyren Lacy looks like probably the next big star for LSU at the wide receiver position. They bring back a couple other guys too. I don't think they're going to have an issue, at least from a talent perspective, at the wide receiver position, and I really like the potential of Kyren Lacy. At tight end, Mason Taylor is really, really good, and I think they're going to have a really good offensive line. They've got 2 of the best tackles in the league. They're experienced. The only question mark is going to be center. They've got a brand new center, and center, outside of the quarterback, the center is the only player that touches the ball on every single play, and we sometimes take the center for granted, at least in terms of his ability to snap the ball. Watch Alabama's game against Michigan in the playoffs last year and realize how important it is for a center to possess the skill of snapping the ball. So until we see that new center play in a few games, it's hard to be 100% confident in him, but I think overall their offensive line will be okay. Look over on the defense. It's just not the same story over there. I'm very concerned again this season about LSU's defense. Now, Perkins, they're going to keep him at inside linebacker. At least that's what all the reports say now. We'll see. Of course, 2 years ago, he played on the outside, and he was one of the best defensive players in the country. Never mind at LSU or in the SEC, was one of the best defensive players in the country as a true freshman 2 years ago, playing on the outside. A lot of rushing the quarterback, very disruptive. Last year, they moved him inside to inside linebacker. And he kind of became an afterthought. Not that he wasn't any good, but he didn't have near the numbers he had that first year. In my opinion, he didn't have near the effect on the game that he had playing on the outside in year 1. And because LSU's defense was just so bad overall, he just kind of got overshadowed. Same thing with Major Burns on the back end. I really like him. I think Perkins and Major Burns are going to play in the NFL. They're good. They would start and play significant amounts of time on almost any team in the country. They're really, really good. Outside of those 2 guys, they're wandering the wilderness. They're lost. They've got next to nothing on the defensive line that worries anybody at all. And that's not my opinion. The LSU coaching staff feels the same way. That's why they went after so many defensive tackles in the portal this season. And unfortunately for LSU, they just missed on all the highly rated transfer prospects they went after on that defensive line. Their secondary was really bad last year, particularly the corners. And I just don't have any faith, confidence, or trust that they're going to get that turned around this season. I expect LSU's defense to be pretty bad again in 2024. Will it be as bad as it was in 2023? Probably not. Like I said, it seems like one of the worst LSU defenses of my lifetime last year. They gave up 28 points a game, 400 and something yards a game. I mean, just absolutely abysmal. You can't you can't exaggerate. I can't stop coughing. I'm allergic to LSU. I'm allergic to corn dogs. You can't exaggerate how bad LSU's defense was last year, and it's frustrating for the LSU fans because you've got a national title capable offense with a Heisman-winning quarterback, and you're capped at 9-3 because your defense can't stop a nosebleed. I think we're going to see a similar situation for LSU defensively this year. I don't have faith in LSU's ability to get that thing turned around in 1 year. Now, if they make a couple of small steps forward this year, if some of their younger recruits end up being hits or home runs, and they can strike in the portal next year, then I think next year LSU's defense will have the ability, like we saw at Ohio State in year 2, to take a massive step forward. Because, again, LSU's a team that's loaded with talent. Look at the recruiting rankings. Same thing with Ohio State, right? Coordinator can make a big difference, so we'll see. But I don't think it'll be enough for this year. In other words, LSU's not going to have a top 10 defense. They're just not. If there's anybody out there expecting that, you're delusional. You're delusional, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about the Vegas numbers. I mentioned already, Vegas has their win total at 9. That's too high. I don't see a way possible LSU goes 9-3 in the regular season. I would bet the under. If you're a degenerate betting type person, I would bet under 9 wins for LSU. But that's the over-under for LSU is 9 wins. They are picked to finish 5th in the SEC in terms of the odds. So in terms of winning the SEC, there are 4 teams with better odds to win the SEC than LSU. It's Georgia, Texas, Bama. Georgia, Texas, Bama, and Ole Miss all have better odds to win the SEC. LSU right behind them at 5th. National championship, again, very surprising. I don't know if this is name recognition. I don't understand. 7th best odds to win the national title. I don't see it. I don't even see LSU making the playoffs. I just don't. I think they're a year away from that. At best, but they got the 7th best odds to win the national title. All right, here's their schedule. Let's go through it game by game and see. Am I right or wrong? How many of these games can they win? Which ones are they going to lose? Here we go. They start out with a game out in the desert, Las Vegas. Uncle Lou's new second home. I love it out there. I'll be out there next week. Shh, don't tell anybody, especially the lady. But a neutral site game against Southern Cal. This game was played last year. It would have been a basketball score. LSU won the Heisman last year with Jaden Daniels. The year before that, it was Caleb Williams. Last year we would have got to see Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams. 2 teams with amazing offenses and absolutely no defense at all. I don't think it'll be much difference this year, though. Both these teams have new starting quarterbacks, but, I trust Lincoln Riley's ability to pick a quarterback, don't you? I mean, I'd knock Lincoln Riley like everybody else does for some of his losses, his defensive performance over the last 7 or 8 years, his lack of kind of toughness along the lines of scrimmage, his sort of finesse style that he seems to have. Yes, I understand all that, and that's fair criticism for Lincoln Riley. But just like you expect Lincoln Riley to have a bad defense every year because he's always had a bad defense every year, shouldn't we also give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to quarterback and offense that, Caleb Williams is gone. We don't know a whole lot about the new guy, but we know Lincoln Riley picked him. Probably going to be pretty good. I think LSU's offense is going to be pretty good. I think this will be one of the more entertaining games of week 1. Hard to pick. I mean, I could see this game going either way. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't trust LSU early in the season to win this game. I think LSU is caught between kind of a rock and a hard place type of situation here. They've got so much new staff-wise, personnel-wise, player-wise. So much is new. I feel like it's going to take them a couple of weeks to get going. I also feel like they're not very deep, especially on the defensive side of the ball, so that basically, LSU could have a trajectory that sort of they get better and better and better as the season goes along, and they get more comfortable in with the new offensive coordinator, the new quarterback, the new defensive staff, and they start to improve a little bit from week to week. But then a couple of injuries here or there could really derail a team like LSU, especially defensively. I think they lose week 1 to Southern Cal. Now, I'm not confident in this pick at all. I'll be honest. I've had to do like a confidence rating on how, 1 to 10, 10 being like I'm 100% sure LSU loses. I'm like a 4. Like, I'm not very confident. This is a tricky game to pick for me. I don't trust either defense. I do trust both offenses. And to me, it's just a matter of which defense can make 1 or 2 stops here, because doesn't this feel like a 45-40 type of game? It kind of does to me. I'm giving the nod to Southern Cal. LSU has not performed well early in the season under Brian Kelly. They've got the losses to Florida State the last couple of years early in the season. Last year in particular wasn't even close, especially in the second half, and that was with Jaden Daniels and that offense that we saw last year. It's technically a neutral site game, a little bit closer. Southern Cal fans don't travel, though. They don't even go to home games. Southern Cal's like West Coast Miami. No one goes to watch that thing. But I think Southern Cal finds a way to get the job done. I think LSU starts 0-1. They come back home, Nichols, lower classification school, they'll get a win there. And then their first conference game on the road at South Carolina. I'm not going to lie, I thought about this one for a while too. This can be a tough place to play. South Carolina plays, I think, Kentucky the week before. They're going to be a little beat up from that game. Kentucky's one of the more physical teams in the SEC along the lines of scrimmage. I think LSU goes into Williams-Brice Stadium, which can be a tough place to play, and gets a win. I think LSU starts the SEC 1-0, 2-1 on the season. Then they come back home and play UCLA. Kind of odd, LSU playing both the LA schools this year, Southern Cal neutral site, UCLA at home. UCLA is just a mess. Chip Kelly left them high and dry, quitting basically at the very end of January, beginning of February, whatever it was. They had no chance really to go out and do a coaching search. They lost Dante Moore, their sort of future at the quarterback position, to the portal. He got scooped up by Oregon. I think UCLA is in for a really rough year. Not going to be a fun trip for them into Tiger Stadium in Death Valley there at the end of September. It's going to be hot. I think LSU wins the game. South Alabama at home. Again, a lower classification school that LSU should have no trouble with. I think you get the win there. You're starting the season 4-1 heading into your first bye week. Bye weeks are important always in college football. We know that. You get an extra week to prepare for your next opponent. You also get to rest up players that might be hurt, injured, banged up, bruised, battered, whatever the case may be. Young players get a very valuable extra week of practice. It just always important, the bye weeks. Even more important this year because we have two of them. And the first one for LSU comes here after their fifth game. Ole Miss, on the other hand, so you have a bye week and then you host Ole Miss, all right? Ole Miss, on the other hand, will be playing the second of back-to-back road games here. They play on the road at South Carolina while LSU has that bye week. And then they turn right back around and go back on the road again to LSU. And I think LSU beats them. LSU will be rested. I think that extra week of practice here that LSU is going to get offensively with the new offensive coordinator, some of the younger guys on defense, I think this is huge for them. Rest up, extra week to prepare for Lane Kiffin's offense, which has some questions of its own. Of course, Quinshon Judkins transferred out to Ohio State. They're still going to be really good. They're in the top 10 in most preseason rankings. Their defense is a little bit of a question mark, in my opinion. I think LSU can exploit that again like they did last year. I've got questions about Ole Miss in the secondary. Remember last year's game? We already talked about it. 55-49. Ole Miss beat LSU last year. I think you could see a similar thing this year. That game was at Ole Miss. This one's in LSU. I think you could see a similar thing this year with LSU actually coming out on top and beating Ole Miss. The biggest win of the year for sure so far for Brian Kelly and LSU. They're still at just the one loss. Then LSU has to play back-to-back road games. So this is where LSU fans are going to have to bear with me a little bit here. I'm giving you a win against Ole Miss, a game that most people are going to have LSU losing, I think, anyway. LSU is predicted to finish ahead of, or Ole Miss is predicted to finish ahead of LSU in the SEC. They're predicted to have more wins. They're higher ranked, all that kind of thing. Most people are probably going to predict that Ole Miss beats LSU. I don't. But because of where it falls on the schedule, LSU has the bye week, whereas Ole Miss is playing back-to-back, the second of back-to-back road games. I think LSU gets a big win there. But then LSU has to go on the road 2 weeks in a row, right, to two teams that I think they're better than. I think you're better than Arkansas, and I think you're better than Texas A&M. I think you lose to Arkansas. I think Arkansas sneaks up on you. This is a sandwich game here. Arkansas, a lot of problems there. I mean, too many to name. Sam Pittman could be in his last year there, right? Ole Miss is going to be a huge game. I think you beat them. Very emotional. You celebrate you got just the one loss. You'll be ranked in the top 15 for sure. Texas A&M on the horizon there. Another huge game. And again, it's back-to-back road games, which is very difficult. I don't think you win both of these road games. So I'm going to give you a loss on the road at Arkansas, but a win on the road at Texas A&M. I really like Elko. I think he's going to be a massive improvement just from a coaching perspective over Jimbo Fisher. If he can keep the recruiting at a similar level, the talent acquisition, whether it be portal, recruiting, whatever it is, if he can keep the talent acquisition at a similar level to what Jimbo had, I think he can have more success on the field than what Jimbo had. I don't think it'll come this year for Elko, though. I think LSU goes on the road, beats Texas A&M after losing on the road the week before to Arkansas. If that gives you a coronary, a stroke, or a heart attack or whatever, and it makes you feel better to switch them or reverse them, then switch them and reverse them. Give yourself a win against Arkansas and a loss against Texas A&M. But in any case, I think you lose one of those back-to-back road games for the same reason that Ole Miss loses one of those back-to-back road games, and their loss is to you. So this stuff kind of equals out in the end. Then you have your second bye week, comes at a good time before one of your biggest, maybe the biggest game of the year, Bama at home. Unfortunately, I think Bama gets you again. I am on the fence with Bama. Like most people, I don't really know what to expect from Kalen DeBoer in year one. We all know Bama's going to have one of the most talented rosters in the country. I'm not high or as high as some other people, I guess, on Jalen Mildew at quarterback. I'm curious to see if Kalen DeBoer tries to sort of force Jalen Milroe to be Michael Penix. In other words, is that the type of offense they're going to run? I think Bama would be better suited to be sort of a ground and pound team this year, which could really take advantage of Jalen Milroe's strengths, his legs. But they've got three of the best running backs in the SEC, in my opinion. Alabama does. They've just got some absolute workhorses back there. Maybe the best offensive line in the SEC, if not second best. I think they should but DeBoer's not really done that. Penix was a kind of drop back, throw the ball type of guy. So I've got questions about Alabama like everybody else does. I still think they're really, really good. And while it is a huge advantage for LSU to get them at home, and they are coming off a bye week, and again, I'm not very confident on this one either. Is there a scenario where LSU wins this game at home against Bama? Of course there is. Of course, obviously. And this is a huge game. I'm giving the edge to Bama in this one. I think you lose coming out of the bye week. I also think you lose the following week at Florida. Been a long time since they've beat you, and I don't think Florida's going to be very good this year. Billy Napier may be out of a job already when this game is played, which could actually be a boost for Florida to get rid of that dead weight. Billy Napier has been a massive failure at Florida, but he has won one game a year. Now, granted, it's been in the beginning of the year that no one saw coming. 2 years ago, they beat Utah in September. Last year, they beat Tennessee early in the year. They could get another one of those big wins early in the year. I think they capped that off this year with a similar win in the last month of the season. If you look at Florida's last 4 or 5 games, and I should have pulled it up and I didn't, that's on me. I apologize, or do I have it pulled up here? Let's see. Yeah, I do have it pulled up. Now, everybody has talked about this Florida schedule till you're blue in the face, basically. But here it is. Here's their schedule. It's ridiculously hard. So they have their second bye week. Wait a minute, that's 2023. That's not going to do us no good. 2024, here you go. I promise I know what I'm doing. All right, so here's their 2024 schedule. So, and again, everybody under the sun has talked about this. So they have about their second bye week, October 26th, right here. Okay? Coming out of that, look at these last 5 games. Now, all 5 of these teams are better than Florida. And am I going to be surprised if Florida loses every one of these games by 14 or more? No, I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised at all. They're not any good. And again, there is a very good chance they have a bye week. Then they play Georgia on November 2nd. There's a very good chance Billy Napier gets fired on November 3rd. Probably over a 50% chance. But do I really think they're going to lose all 5 of these in a row? I want to think that. But I do think they pull off one of them. And I've decided that one is LSU. Now, I know the overwhelming majority of people are going to disagree with me on this pick, and I get it. If you look at the odds right now, LSU would be a big favorite. But the game is on the road. It is at Florida. It is late in the year. Talked about it in the beginning of the schedule portion of the video. Attrition could be a problem for a team like LSU, particularly on the defensive side of the ball where they don't have a lot of high-end talent to start with. If they start having to play 2s and 3s over there later in the year, it could become a problem. Graham Mertz is a better quarterback than I thought he would be there. Again, look, I'm not going to come on here and toot Florida's horn. They're not any good. But we see teams all the time lose to teams lose games all the time when they're the better team. The better team doesn't always win. I mean, we've all been watching college football a long time. You see surprises every single year. Could I be wrong about the Florida? Of course. I could be wrong about every game on here. Believe it or not, I do not pick every game right. How many of you were on this channel in 2019? You're not going to believe this. I actually picked Georgia to beat South Carolina in 2019. Facts. So yeah, I've got stuff wrong before. and it could happen again. But I've got you losing on the road at Florida. You come back home, win against Vandy, the worst team in the SEC, and then the last game of the regular season, and this will be a fun game to watch. Oklahoma and LSU, to me, are similar teams record-wise. At the end, I think they're going to have similar records, these two teams. One of these teams is going to finish with, 8 or 9 wins, and the other one's going to finish with 7 or 8 based on who wins this last game, right? And neither one of these teams is making the playoffs, in my opinion. So this will just be a played for pride, basically. Oklahoma, new kid on the block in the SEC. In Death Valley, in LSU. LSU gets the win over the Sooners. You close out your regular season with a big win over Oklahoma. That leaves you with 1, 2, 3, 4 losses on the season. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 4. I've got you at 8 and 4. Now I'm going to be honest. I thought LSU was a 6 or 7 win team before I sat down and started and looked at what I looked at and looked at the schedule and tried to find wins and losses. I think I've even said it on the call-in show multiple times that LSU is a borderline bowl team, might win 6 games, maybe 7. After looking at the schedule, after reevaluating some things, I think they can do a little bit better than that. I still think they fall below that Vegas number of 9. I've got LSU at 8 and 4. Be sure and let me know down below how stupid I am, and have a good morning.